of consciousness from this guy's brain. And you're like, no.
I mean, it's just that, like, usually when it comes to democratic proceedings, right, I wouldn't expect the president to say, I'm going to war if I ran, and then the chief of, like, the Secretary of Defense replying underneath that thread going, yes, Mr. President. So I feel like relying off of Twitter and Truth Social.
Wait, I don't understand what the record was.
But it's what I'm going to, like, the fact of, like, we're talking about the fact that, like, there's implication that, like, there's, because he's, like, lampooning it all over fucking Twitter, that his FCC leader, his executive of the FCC, is looking at that going, yes, President Trump. I feel like we don't do that for most things in general. Like, we don't look at, like,
we don't
comments for, like,
no,
like, I'm just saying, for, like, finding proof that, like, in order, like, I feel like you have to have the president sitting there on his desk going, da-da-da-da, this executive order, da-da-da-da, like, I want this member of the head to do this and this and get rid of Jimmy Kimmel. Like, I feel like you have to have that
for all of that.
But then, like, I feel like we're just using Twitter, like, threads. Like,
we're using the speech of the president and then the actions of the people underneath him that are directly following the orders of his speech.
Okay, so to run this through, like, a hypothetical Donald Trump says, I'm declaring war on Iran tomorrow, for whatever reason, right?
Okay.
And his chief of Secretary of Defense replies to that. Is that suddenly official?
Is it suddenly official, or would he suddenly do it?
Yeah, would you suddenly do it, and then would you then say that, like, well, Donald Trump told him to declare war based off of, like, a Twitter thread?
Maybe not. It's hard because
But this is what I'm saying.
No, stop. It's difficult because the commander-in-chief, we already have, like, the authorized use of military force in the Middle East, so he kind of already has the authority to do that. Okay,
so he does. Yeah.
If there's, like, any other example, then it's different. I'm not saying that, like, these things are happening because he's truthing it. I'm just saying that as you see him truth it, he say everything, we can see where everything is coming from.
Yeah, I just find it, like, difficult to, like, fully, like, if there isn't, like, a concrete link there. There is obviously overlap, right?
Do you think that Donald Trump talked to his FCC head about pressuring them to get rid of licenses or whatever, to do something about Jimmy Kimmel and Steve Levere?
I don't have any proof that he did, which is what I'm highlighting.
Okay, but then in that case, then you can't have any beliefs about anything in office ever, because you have no direct communication proof of every single conversation that's ever happened.
I mean, you have plenty of transcripts from the president. Like, we have the, oh god, what the hell are they called? The National Archives of Congress.
Yeah, you don't have the record of every single thing.
Almost everything. They literally take scraps, like Joe Biden's scraps of notes that he wrote down.
Yeah, but we don't have every
inside his car
between
are in, like,
you don't have every single communication between him and his inferior officers or his cabinet members for every single thing he's doing. We don't
Yeah, but
all
then-
those. We assume that, like, the government is operating in a certain way.
I guess this is a good time to segue into the Supreme Court ruling stuff, because
Sure. Well, just real quick, like,
Yeah.
Trump is truthing out to Bondi, like, you need to go after these, like, political opponents, and now we have, like, crazy indictments on Comey. Do you think that Trump told Bondi, like, in personal meetings, like, hey, you need to go after Comey?
I don't have any proof of that. Like, it's
Okay, you know that he
like
told
directs,
Comey-
I need transcripts, or I
Okay,
need, like, to
what
some
about-
degree, like,
okay, this is not a level of providing you ever expect for anything else, but let's assume you do. Trump told Comey, you need to end the investigation into me, and then Comey didn't, he fired him.
right.
You believe that happened, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've seen records of him engaging in what even Mueller said is probably obstruction of justice.
Yeah.
So obstructing investigation. So why wouldn't we think that he's directing his attorney general to go after people when he's truthing
I mean,
out?
for the same reason I wouldn't believe Mayor Garland was run by the Joe Biden administration to prosecute Trump.
But
Because
because
there's no direct proof. Like, I want direct proof. Like, I'm okay with agreeing. If it did come out that he did pressure the FCC, and there's, like, transcripts of it, he's saying, listen, I hate Jimmy Kimmel. I really want him off air. Here's what I need you to do. I need you to say that you're going to strike the license, and you're going to do this, and pressure them to get him off. If that was the case, then yeah, I'd be like, okay, the executive kind of...
The Merrick Garland stuff is not a direct comparison because, like, we can imagine...
Then why bring it up?
What?
Then why bring it up? You brought up earlier as a direct comparison.
What was I comparing it to?
Like the situation about, like...
Oh, no, wait. I'm sorry. You're making the comparison, but I'm saying that the Merrick Garland thing wouldn't apply the same way here because we can imagine Merrick Garland taking the actions as the DOJ head that he is, that he needs to be taking these actions independent from Biden, because we've got plenty of statements from all the parties involved saying Biden and Garland don't directly communicate with each other because it's improper. Biden himself believes that. He said as much. Merrick Garland believes that. He said as much. All the stuff he's investigating, one, there's a special counsel that was appointed for this, so it wasn't even directly Garland's decision. A lot of it was for Jack Smith, right? And so we have all of this. We have no reason to believe it. We've got plenty of information from people saying it wouldn't happen, and we can totally conceive of the scenario. Like, well, why would this happen? Well, of course, he's done a lot of crazy, criminal shit. Like, it makes sense why this investigation happened. Meanwhile, an FCC head has never, to my knowledge, in the history of the United States, come out and said things like we need to pull the licensure from these comedians that the president hates with no connection to anything the president's telling you whatsoever. And Donald Trump directs all of his other officers openly. He says it on tweet constantly. That's a pretty easy thing to believe. Donald Trump doesn't come out and deny it. Donald Trump doesn't come out and say, oh no, I would never, like, wouldn't you say that? Like, well, I never talked to the FCC head about, like, threatening anybody or anything like that.
Yeah, but we know Donald Trump at this point just rolls with the punches at this point. Like, whatever is running headlines, whatever news, he doesn't really try to stake, like, a claim on anything because it kind of caters
to... Well, he'll deny stuff if he thinks that he's denied the Epstein stuff a ton, right? He's not rolling with that.
Yeah.
So I feel like the circumstantial, I feel like there's a ton of, like, it's pretty obvious that he's directing his people around. I don't think he said, you need to threaten to pull, he probably told, I don't know who they're talking about, he probably directed something, said, we need, whatever we can do to get these fuckers off there or whatever, and then people bring him ideas, like, what if we do this, we can threaten, let him do it, yeah, fuck, you do that, yeah.
It's just like my issue is I can conceptualize a lot of worlds, right? In the same way where like Joe Biden, yes, has degrees of separation between his investigation, but very easily like degrees of separation could be used to like obfuscate the fact of like where the orders are actually coming down, which is from the executive branch, right? So, and you can argue that like, well, if he ran his administration differently, it doesn't mean that it couldn't happen, right? And my issue is like, I just want evidence.
Yeah, that kind of proof would never be achievable in any government. Because most of the time you're going to have direct communication. We can look at all the other actions. If Biden was controlling the DOJ, why was there a special prosecutor investigating his own document? We have more information about the Biden documents in his garage than we got about the Trump Mar-a-Lago stuff. Why did Biden preside over a special prosecutor that was investigating his son? Hunter Biden for how long? Like none of this makes sense if he's actually directing.
It's not like I'm trying to stake a claim or whether or not Mayor Carl. I'm just highlighting the fact that like there is a lack of like evidence to confirm Republican beliefs on that. And when I'm conservative, I look, I go, okay, I can't like get behind that in the same way I can't get behind the idea that the FCC chairman was like jumping in on this fire because like I need like some.
Sure. Okay, so then just curious, so just one tangential claim, we go to the next thing. Okay. You would never, ever make the claim ever that Biden was ever senile, right? Because we have no 100% confirmation or proof of any kind of senility. A bad debate performance is not evidence of being senile.
I mean, I would say he's old, and old people forget stuff. I mean, I got a grandmother.
We're not talking about being old, we're talking about being senile.
Well, okay. I would say that he probably wasn't senile. I mean, he was able to maintain himself on stage. I do think he was old and like unfit in a lot of ways because of his age.
What do you about unfit? Now we're playing musical word game. No, was Donald Trump unfit because of his age? Because I think he's the same age.
To some degree, yeah. I mean, Donald Trump's getting up there. You can see he's kind of getting sleepy with the auto pen stuff, and it's difficult, right? Like, I mean,
do you understand for both? Okay. All right. Next, what was the next thing?
Okay, so this is kind of going to segue off of the Merrick Garland stuff. We can segue right into the Supreme Court ruling. Supreme Court ruling clearly says that the president has immunity to criminal prosecution, right? That's kind of the general gist, and then it also gave him some loosely granted powers to run the executive very strongly, right? That's kind of what the general gist of the ruling. We agree on that? To make sure I'm the same.
I would specify that a lot, but we know that for now.
Yeah, just I don't want to sit there. Sure, yeah, okay. Go into the court briefs. They're killing me. So the reason why I'm harping on this is because I don't think the Supreme Court's ruling was unjustified, right? I think it was completely justified based off of like previous precedent that was set by previous presidents, right? So when we look at the conduct of, we can go way back to, all the way back to Andrew Jackson, right? This man single-handedly pulled out all the funding from every single bank in the national bank, split them up into pet banks. So he literally redistributed finances that were set for the government, redistributed them, wasn't impeached, wasn't charged for anything whatsoever, and now we have people like you complaining about the fact that...
What was the, just curious for Andrew Jackson, what was the crime he had committed then? Did he steal this money for himself personally?
Well, the big issue is that, one, Congress was not in session when he did this. So Congress couldn't even have an opinion on him.
What was the crime he committed?
Well, the crime for impeachment would have been the fact that, I guess you could argue, embezzlement, you could argue a ton of things. Because
doesn't that mean you're personally stealing and mishandling the money? Like
yeah, because there's the pet banks that he put them in were well-known associates that that were in his party and privileged and favored towards him. There's like, you could charge him with a bunch of things, so it's insane. It's insane to be able to take all the money and purposely bankrupt the national bank without Congress's opinion.
But I don't know if it's a crime.
Yeah, but without Congress's approval, who is the coin purser, right?
Why did Congress impeach him afterwards when they came back?
I think there wasn't enough seats that were like against him to be able to properly follow through with the impeachment. They did publicly censure him, which is basically like Congress's ability to condemn the sitting president. It's as close as you can get to an impeachment without being able to actually charge anyone. So it would be similar if like the Democrats got together and said, we really disagree that Donald Trump, like the woman he assaulted, right, and lost a civil case to. Like they could publicly censor him about that and be like, this is really bad, it's like a strong disapproval. But there's an example like that, and people complain about the way Trump's handling the money structure, right, with the way he's just like letting funds drop in certain things. This has been well established as it's something that the president
handled. To be clear, that's not why he's being criminally charged. He's being criminally charged for intentionally mishandling classified material, and then he was being criminally charged for an obstruction of our rights related to the trying to coup the government, basically.
Yeah, I'm just setting up like previous situations where the president was not charged basically for like being able to conduct duties under the executive branch, right? Because the treasury is under his executive branch.
So one, I don't know enough details about the Andrew Jackson thing to talk about today, so I feel like if I were to look into that, I feel like I would probably come away with a different understanding of how you're describing it. Number one. Number two, it doesn't sound like he clearly enunciated like crimes that he's committed, because criminal stuff is different than like doing improper stuff procedurally. And then three, I mean, like a more recent example I would say is why did Ford pardon Nixon if the concept was, the understanding was that like Nixon could ever be charged with a crime?
It's a really good point. Question. Do you think a pardon is an admission of guilt?
I think, yes, I think it's always considered, yeah.
How do you feel about Biden pardoning his cabinet and his members in his house? Do you think that's an admission of guilt? Because you just said that a pardon is an admission of guilt.
I mean, that's generally how it's written. I mean, like, formally, that is how it's written.
So do you think Biden's office committed crimes then?
I think they would have charged with crimes.
Oh, no. You just said that a pardon is an admission of guilt, which is why it matters in the Ford case, Ford pardoning Nixon, because the reason why it shows that the president can be charged is because of the fact that the president is not immune technically, because why else would Ford cover for Nixon?
Yeah.
In the same way, if a pardon is that heavily weighed and that implicit of a sentencing of guilt, how on earth could you argue the same case isn't providing pardoning his cabinet?
You're transposing the argument into something different. The question right now is whether or not somebody can be criminally charged for a thing. It seems like it seems like the understanding was Nixon could be criminally charged.
But where is that coming from?
Because that's what every reasonable person would assume. Nobody would assume the president of the United States would be on criminal charges. Everybody would assume.
Well, when I'm looking at the Andrew Jackson situation,
you also did so far back.
Well, for the record, I can continue through. So we can look at the Trail of Tears that he did, then we can move forward in history.
These crimes?
Well, yeah, I would consider the forcible relocation of the Native Americans and attempted genocide of them to be a crime, especially since
this is going to sound cold, but I guess in front of my audience, but like a genocide is not like a crime. Like you can't be charged in the United States for that as a crime if your function as like commander-in-chief or whatever, right? That's what you're doing.
I mean, if you want to argue that they were citizens of the United States, which they were since we, annexed their land, right? They were citizens of the United States. Forcibly relocating your own citizens is definitely against the Quartering Act, number one, if you want to go through the Constitution, but you could go bit by bit, ripping apart the way it's not even equal treatment, right? All those other things. And then to go further in history, we look at FDR and the internment camps, which were concentration camps for the record, were completely not charged for literally stripping U.S. citizens of their own rights. He was not impeached for violating their freedom of speech, for violating their right to autonomy, for violating, they're literally being quartered by soldiers in their own home. They're breaking multiple constitutional amendments.
So no, they're not. Okay, so for the internment camp stuff, that was literally a law passed by Congress granting the power.
It was not a law passed by Congress.
Wasn't that from the?
No, it was an executive order. It was an executive order.
The executive order, ordering it, but the authority to do that came from the Animanious Act.
It might have come from the Animanious Act, but the main point is that it was an executive order used.
An executive order is just the president saying they're going to do a thing. You can't create new laws, until Trump. You can't create new laws with an executive order. It's just like a direction for your branch.
To some degree,
the power that he was drawing from came from the Animanious Act. That's where he got the authority to do that.
To some degree, you can create new laws.
No.
For the record, Andrew Jackson wrote an executive order to separate the funds from the banks.
From 5,000 years ago. I can't.
I'm just highlighting like a trail. Okay.
But now I know that you just brought up the internment camp stuff completely incorrectly because there's a specific law passed by Congress to allow him to do that. So I don't know if the Andrew Jackson.
Okay. For the record, the Animanious Act doesn't say you can intern hundreds of thousands of Japanese citizens. It doesn't say you can intern hundreds of thousands of people.
He's granted wide powers to the president because keep in mind these emergency powers. There was another emergency power. The idea was like we're being invaded by another country, and as a part of that, either invasion or we're actively at war with them. The president has like huge authority to do. That's why they invoked it for the Venezuelan stuff, and they use it to deport Venezuelans with a totally different structure of due process.
Yeah, but putting people in concentration camps is very different than just using the Animanious Act to deport people. Right? Like it's your own U.S. citizens, and like it's an executive order too. That's the other part.
It was an act from Congress. I encourage you to.
Animanious Act was used to help bolster the executive order, right? It was the thing that was used as a permission to. But the executive, it's not like the Animanious Act says well, we can put a bunch of people in concentration camps. It doesn't say that.
I think it gives the president the ability to, for people from any country's nationalities, or I don't know, but nationalities, were allowed to, like, without like due process, to be like detained in like times of war and stuff. That was a huge power that was granted via that. Because it was supposed to be the idea was like, let's say Mexico invades us, like, right now. Like, does the president have the ability to say, okay, well, hold on, if you're Mexican, like, you gotta chill or whatever, right? It's kind of shitty, but I mean, like, that would be an emergency power granted to the president if you are of that nationality. But I'm just saying, like, these were founded in law, whether we think it's extreme or not. Why did Nixon accept the pardon from Ford unless he thought he'd be charged with a crime? And because he thought he'd be charged with a crime. When you talk about like Biden being pardoned, his son, or you talk about like the J6 being pardoned, they accepted those pardons because they thought they were going to be charged with crimes from the Republicans.
Okay, but the main reason why Ford pardoning Nixon matters, right, is because it implies that the president can be criminally charged, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If that is the case, right, and you said it was an admission of guilt, right?
I'm saying that people see pardons, and that's a separate thing, but people generally see pardons as an admission of guilt, sure.
Okay, but if you're not arguing that it's an admission of guilt, then like the pardon is basically meaningless.
No, the important thing about the pardon is that you can't be charged with that crime, because you're pardoned from it. You've already double jeopardy, right? You can't.
Right.
Yeah.
So, wait, what I'm saying is like the pardon itself, right?
Yes.
When the president issues it, right, and it prevents that person from being charged with that crime.
Correct.
Right? That's like the implication, right? So when it comes to like Ford pardoning Nixon, right, and that was in reference to Watergate, right? I don't see how like anyone can issue pardons for anything, right? Like it doesn't mean that the person actually committed the crime, right? So like if they didn't actually commit the crime, then like a pardon is just a meaningless piece of paper. Like the president could pardon anyone, right? And like it doesn't actually have like
I think it's a really wide. It is a wide thing. Yeah. The president.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So like how can you apply that like the president could be charged based off the pardon if there isn't actually any like merit to like what a pardon means?
Well, what a pardon, you keep going to this, like, does it mean you're guilty or innocent or whatever? The pardon means the federal government can't charge you with that crime.
Yeah, but then the reason why I'm bringing up the Biden situation is why would Biden pardon his family members if he wasn't worried that they could be charged with crimes?
Because he was worried they were going to be charged with crimes.
Okay, so in the Nixon's case, he got pardoned because he was worried he could be charged with crimes.
Yes.
Right, but that doesn't mean he would actually be like capable of committing those. Like it doesn't mean that they actually are like real, right? That's our acknowledgement.
I'm just saying that he was acting, and everybody in the country was under the assumption, all of our investigative bodies were under the assumption that the president could be charged with crimes. And everybody was acting in that way. Like that was the assumption. Like, of course, the president would be charged with crimes.
Okay, but like I'm looking at all these examples of history where the president is not charged. Not to that extent. I'm just saying, like with FDR and stuff, like these were cases that were brought before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that it is okay, basically, for the president to.
Yeah, but when the Supreme Court is bringing these cases, what they're challenging is, my guess is, I don't know the particular case, my guess is the challenge for these cases was that the executive has the power to perform these acts, not trying to hold him personally, criminally liable for them.
Okay, I get where you're.
And Trump's stuff wasn't like this would be a totally different conversation if we were talking about Trump committed some act as president doing a thing or whatever. He was doing these for his personal beneficial gain. That was the issue. There were crimes that he was persecuting for his own personal enrichment, not like actions as his role as president, like he tries to say, or like the Supreme Court tried to say.
Okay, and when you're talking about those actions, right? So the whole argument for immunity stems from the idea that like whatever the president does under the executive branch, right, is something that basically can't be charged. Criminally. That's the conclusion they came to, right? And that's like something that has been upheld in court after court after court, right? Like the president.
We just got this like 3 years. This is 2022 or 2023.
2023.
Yeah, so we mean it's been upheld. It's like a.
I mean, I'm saying like